gaps we have seen are many, but we chose one that says victims of violence and perpetrators of violence. Let's face it, like in case of Somalia, you might have a victim and a perpetrator living together in the same household. So the gap we see is that when organizations, whether it's governmental or non-governmental, are developing policies and making decisions to combat terrorism, we do not involve victims and ask how they feel to be protected. We don't ask them, what do you think? How can we combat terrorism? How can we eliminate your former friends? We don't ask them, we don't involve them. That's the gap we see. What is the risk in there? Lack of buy-in. If you do not involve people that we want to protect in the decision-making process, they're not going to buy in. They will not see the value of the policy that we are developing. They will not participate in the process itself or the implementation of the policies. And that's the risk we saw. What's the opportunity? In that we saw the opportunity to ask the victims, how can we help you? What policies you would like to be put in place? Ask them, involve them. We need them in order to fight and combat terrorism. We need victims, and we know the victims. Who are the victims? Women, children, poor, people that are vulnerable. Those are people that need protection. And we need to ask them.
Limited gender mainstreaming. How does this pose a risk for Kenya? There are gaps in understanding and integrating gender dynamism effectively. We have limited awareness and capacity among, first, the legislative arm of government, the policy makers, law enforcement agencies, that is the police, and other stakeholders. How does it affect us? It hinders development and prioritization, implementation, and collaboration of gender-sensitive approaches and programs. What opportunities can we derive from this? We have public sensitization on P/CVEs through opinion leaders, religious leaders, church, mosque. We have community elders, for example, Maasai elders. We have also for example, the Jew in Cheke. We have the Kikuyu cultural leaders in our communities. Another opportunity that may arise from this gap is that we can now have a discussion on national frameworks on awareness across the geographical, political, and religious divide. It also incorporates gender issues in the curriculum so that as soon as our children go to school, from primary through to university, they are able to understand how we can see PCV in violent extremism through the gender lens. Another gap we've identified is resource constraint, whereby we violated insufficient funding and resource allocation to gender-sensitive legislation dealing with violent extremism. How is this a risk? You see, during budget-making process, as an nation, we prioritize what we find that is important for us. When we have ideas and when we have a topic such as preventing and countering violent extremism, not prioritized. So when we have insufficient resources, we underfund such initiatives.
The issue of male dominance in the fight against violent extremism, seen as the sector that the men should be the one to take lead, to guide, and in doing that, it has become extremely very difficult as a risk for the women to be accepted as well in fighting violent extremism. So what do we need to do? We need to bring both the male, that group, together with the women and educate them, and the women also show them that we are ready to join the queue and help you do this work better. But also we need to undertake awareness. As you know, peace and security issues structured even at the lowest level, whereby women are excluded. So the awareness and sensitization will allow the community mindset to change, to accept seeing women seated and discussing peace and security with them other than men. But also we need to empowerment. Women are vulnerable, and if they're empowered, then they can have a voice to say. The second issue is the negative cultural belief and practice within the community. My colleagues already mentioned is that by design, these institutions were created by men. And because of that, the belief is that the women are supposed to focus on reproduction, into the kitchen affairs, when discussion on peace and security, or when discussion on counter-violent extremism is happening. And this has intentionally excluded women, and this is something that we need to deal with. Even not only that, even the legislators find it challenging. So I think we need to have legislation that can intentionally introduce women into the discussion of peace and security. And this will also build awareness within the cultural institution. So those are the opportunities. The third one is limited knowledge on PCB among the legislators. Someone already mentioned this, that most of the legislators, like here, I think in Uganda there are already 4, and they are now the experts. But we have over 543 or 46 legislators. And when discussion on CVE need to be adopted, the 4 might not manage if they are the only one championing. They need to continue building the capacities of the legislators, so that some of the discussions, or it makes it easier to integrate the PCB policies into the budget. You know, everything works with resources, and the budget is not passed by the Defense Committee only, passed by the entire House. So the legislators need to understand the importance of allocating resources to implement the national action plans and also the various PCB policies in place for allocating the resources. Definitely the opportunities are there, the human resources are there, the legislators themselves, they're ready to champion and walk the talk. And the ones that have already, their capacities have already been built, but also the political will is there. So it's very fundamental, so we need just to bring more on board so that many can have a conversation on this.
The first gap we identified is culturally biased misunderstanding of gender and women. This is the first gap we identified, a misunderstanding because of our culture. Women are misunderstood. And that misunderstanding also has a big risk. And that risk is women are lowly participating in decision making, in economic activities, in social activities. And this doesn't harm only not women, it affects the society, the development of the country itself. So this is the risk. When we go to the opportunity based from the first gap identification, gender issues became issue of government and society. Serious issue of government, serious issue of society has become so. Government is highly involved in society is trying to be involved. The second gap that we identified from the multitude of gaps is gender issues youth are less included in PCD, policy strategy and goal. This is a gap when we relate it to the risk. Women are lowly participating in peace and security. Even there are many women in security organizations and institutions, but when you go and see her status, what is her participation, you can understand. So this is the risk. The third one is gender oppressed treatment of women and girls, exclusion in society. This is a big gap. When we see the risk, low level of economic participation of women, and mostly the level of their living is low, mostly in the society.
Elle évolue à chaque année. Le gap, c'est la prise en compte de l'extrémisme violent dans cette politique. Quand elle existe, mais elle est insuffisante. Cette politique du genre devrait contrer l'émergence du salafisme. Car certains jeunes, y compris des jeunes étudiantes, adhèrent à cette politique. Et elles sont vulnérables. Il nous faut aussi de bases de données insuffisantes quand elles concernent les jeunes filles. Pour les risques, à Djibouti, il y a des émergences de populations à risque, des jeunes qui adhèrent à l'extrémisme et au salafisme. Le deuxième risque, c'est la propagation et l'expansion d'extrême violence. Pour l'opportunité, il faut autonomisation des femmes et aussi une politique de genre et prendre en compte la lutte contre l'extrémisme violent. Il nous faut une grande campagne de sensibilisation. L'IGAD se doit de proposer une politique globale au pays de l'IGAD et prenant en compte la politique de lutte contre l'extrémisme violent. Je vous remercie.